Huo San, a tranquil land nestled in the valley beneath verdant mountains, was graced by the winding path of the Luo River, shimmering like a silver ribbon through its vast green fields. Here, in a noble family of long-standing traditions of wisdom and virtue, a gifted young girl was born, a girl whose name would later be etched into history as Tai Si. The day Tai Si was born was a special one. It was said that on the night before, a torrential reinvech, but the following morning, the sky was pristine, as though washed clean. Wisps of clouds floated lazily, making way for the warm sunlight that bathed the land. Farmers in the fields were astonished to see peach blossoms blooming out of season, and word quickly spread that something extraordinary had occurred. The Huo San family, led by its wise and virtuous patriarch, rejoiced in the arrival of a daughter who was not only healthy but unusually radiant. From an early age, Tai Si stood out. While other children were absorbed in play, she displayed an insatiable curiosity for the stories her father told about history, great philosophers, and profound moral lessons. Her mother, a gentle yet stern woman, imparted teachings on handling challenges with wisdom and compassion. A woman is not just a supporter, her mother would often say, but the spiritual pillar of her family. Tai Si's childhood was not merely filled with lessons, but also brimming with adventures in nature. She loved exploring the nearby forests, sitting by crystal-clear streams, and sketching the images in her mind using twigs on the soft earth. Villagers often saw her collecting leaves and flowers, arranging them into intricate patterns. "She is not only beautiful but also intelligent," remarked an elderly woman in the village. "One day, she will achieve great things." As Tai Si grew older, her parents decided to invite the best tutors in the region to educate her. She was taught to write, read ancient texts, and study the philosophies of Zhou Dynasty, whom her father admired as a symbol of wisdom and justice. Through these lessons, she learned not only to discern right from wrong, but also the importance of compassion and sacrifice for the greater good. Beyond academic knowledge, Tai Si was taught the art of interpersonal relations. Her mother often took her on visits to impoverished families in the village, teaching her the value of sharing and caring for the less fortunate. No leader is worthy if they cannot understand the pain of their people, her mother would remind her. These lessons left an indelible mark on Tai Si, shaping her into a kind-hearted and resilient individual. Despite being the daughter of a noble family, Tai Si never displayed arrogance. She often assisted the household servants, from cooking to cleaning. On one occasion, when she saw a servant injured from overwork, she personally tended to their wounds and insisted they rest. Her dedication and kindness earned her the admiration of everyone around her, from family members to villagers. By the time Tai Si reached her 20s, her reputation for both beauty and intellect had spread far and wide. Noble families from across the region competed to win her hand in marriage, offering lavish gifts and promises of a life of luxury. However, Tai Si was not quick to accept any proposal. She yearned for a partner with ideals, someone who would build a better future alongside her. It was during this time that Zhichang, the young leader of the Zhou tribe, was working tirelessly to consolidate power and expand his influence. On a journey to forge alliances, he arrived at Huo San. The day he entered the village, people poured out to greet him. Zhichang, with his commanding presence, sharp gaze, and confident demeanor, immediately captured everyone's attention. But it was his sincerity and compassion that truly moved them. When Tai Si met Zhichang for the first time, she could not help but notice his distinct aura. Unlike the many men she had encountered, Zhichang spoke not just of power but of responsibility. He shared his dreams of building a land where people could live in peace and prosperity, where justice and respect prevailed. During his stay in Huo San, Zhichang and Tai Si spent long hours conversing. They shared their aspirations, their beliefs, and their visions for a better world. Gradually, a profound bond grew between them. Zhichang admired Tai Si's wisdom and courage, while she respected his vision and determination. When Ji Chang proposed to Tai Si, she understood that this was not merely a marriage. It was a mission, an opportunity to contribute to a great change. Although she knew life in Zhou would not be easy, she accepted with unwavering faith and hope. The day Tai Si left Huo San was filled with emotion. Villagers, from children who had played with her to the elders who had witnessed her grow up, gathered to bid her farewell. They brought small gifts, heartfelt blessings, and tears of parting. Her mother, the woman who had taught her everything, held her hand one last time and said, "You are the pride of Huo San. Live true to what you have learned and always keep your compassionate heart." The journey to Zhou stretched across vast fields and towering mountains. Along the way,
Tai Si contemplated their future.
she knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. But she also believed that alongside Ji Chang, she could accomplish great things. As the caravan approached Zhou, Tai Si saw the grand gates and, in the distance, Ji Chang standing, waiting for her. In that moment, she felt a surge of strength course through her. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, carrying with her all her faith, hope, and love, ready to embark on a new chapter of her life. The gates of Zhou loomed large and imposing as the caravan carrying Tai Si approached. The land of Zhou was a blend of untamed wilderness and burgeoning civilization. Its people, a mix of farmers, warriors, and craftsmen, worked tirelessly under the vision of their leader, Ji Chang, to transform their modest tribe into a formidable state. For Tai Si, this was not merely a new home. It was the beginning of her greatest challenge and opportunity. As she descended from the carriage, she saw Ji Chang standing tall amidst his advisors and people, his eyes filled with warmth and resolve.
Met hers.
The exchange was brief, but it spoke volumes. She was not just his wife. She was to be his partner in every sense, standing beside him in the monumental task of shaping a brighter future for Zhou. Tai Si's arrival in Zhou was met with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. As a noblewoman from the distant Huo San tribe, she was seen by some as an outsider, her presence raising quiet doubts among Ji Chang's closest advisors. However, Tai Si, ever perceptive, understood that trust could not be demanded, it had to be earned. In her first weeks, she made a point to learn everything about Zhou. She visited farms and workshops, spoke to the villagers, and listened to their concerns. Tai Si had a remarkable ability to make people feel heard and valued. To the farmers struggling with irrigation, she suggested practical solutions based on knowledge she had gained in Huo San. To the women weaving fabrics, she introduced methods to improve efficiency. Her genuine care and wisdom quickly began to win hearts. At the same time, Tai Si worked to establish relationships within Ji Chang's court. She observed the dynamics among his advisors, noting the tension between those loyal to him and those who still harbored doubts about his leadership. Rather than confront them directly, Tai Si chose to lead by example. During a critical council meeting, she proposed a solution to a territorial dispute with a neighboring tribe that demonstrated her keen understanding of diplomacy. Her approach not only averted conflict but also gained her the respect of Ji Chang's key advisors. Tai Si's influence grew steadily as she immersed herself in the affairs of the state. She realized that Zhou's strength lay not only in its warriors but also in its people's unity and well-being. With Ji Chang's support, she spearheaded several initiatives to improve the lives of the common folk. One of her most notable contributions was the development of better agricultural practices. Having seen the advanced irrigation techniques in Huo San, she worked with Zhou's farmers to implement similar methods, ensuring more reliable harvests. Tai Si also organized the construction of granaries, preparing the tribe for potential droughts or wars. Education was another of Tai Si's passions. She believed that knowledge was the key to empowerment. Under her guidance, Zhou established its first schools, where children, regardless of their social status, were taught basic literacy and ethics. Tai Si often visited these schools, sharing stories of great leaders and moral lessons, inspiring the next generation to dream of a better Zhou. In the court, Tai Si became a trusted confidant to Ji Chang. She advised him on matters of governance and strategy, her insights often tipping the scales in critical decisions. Ji Chang, in turn, admired her ability to balance compassion with pragmatism. "You see the heart of Zhou," he once told her during a private conversation, "and that is what makes you irreplaceable." Not everyone in Zhou welcomed Tai Si's influence. Among Ji Chang's court were those who viewed her as a threat to their power. Some spread rumors, questioning her loyalty and accusing her of favoring her own Huo San people. Tai Si was aware of these whispers but chose not to confront them directly. Instead, she let her actions speak for themselves. One incident tested her resolve. A disgruntled noble, feeling sidelined by Ji Chang's reforms, conspired with external forces to destabilize Zhou. Tai Si, through her network of informants, uncovered the plot. Rather than exposing the noble outright, she orchestrated a plan to turn the tables. Using her diplomatic skills, she convinced the conspirators to betray the noble, effectively neutralizing the threat without bloodshed. When Ji Chang learned of her actions, he was both astonished and grateful. "You have not only saved Zhou," he said, "but shown me that leadership is not just about strength, it is about wisdom and foresight." Throughout these challenges, the bond between Ji Chang and Tai Si deepened. They were more than husband and wife. They were equals, united by their shared vision for Zhou. In moments of solitude, they would retreat to a quiet garden in the palace, discussing their dreams and fears. Tai Si often reminded Ji Chang of the importance of staying true to his principles, even in the face of adversity. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, Ji Chang confided in her his doubts about his ability to lead Zhou through the mounting pressures. Tai Si, ever steadfast, took his hand and said, "Greatness is not in never falling, but in rising every time you do. Zhou needs you, but more importantly, needs us. Together, we can overcome anything." Her words reignited his determination, and from that day forward, Ji Chang leaned on Tai Si's unwavering support more than ever. As the years passed, Tai Si turned her attention to nurturing the future of Zhou, her children. She and Ji Chang had several sons, but it was GFA, later known as King Wen of Zhou, who displayed the greatest promise. From a young age, GFA was groomed for leadership, and Tai Si played a central role in his education. Tai Si believed that a leader must possess not only strength but also compassion and wisdom. She taught GFA the values of humility and justice, often recounting the lessons she had learned in Huo San. "Power is a tool," she told him one day, "but it is the heart that wields it wisely." GFA, inspired by his mother's teachings, grew into a capable and thoughtful leader. Tai Si's influence on him would later prove pivotal in his quest to overthrow the Shang Dynasty and establish the Zhou Dynasty. As Zhou prospered under Ji Chang's leadership, Tai Si's contributions became undeniable. Her initiatives had strengthened the state's foundations. Her diplomacy had secured alliances, and her wisdom had guided Ji Chang through countless trials. The people of Zhou, once skeptical of her, now revered her as a symbol of hope and unity. However, Tai Si knew that their work was far from over. The Shang Dynasty, with its oppressive rule under King Zhou, still loomed as a formidable adversary. Ji Chang began to prepare for the eventual confrontation, and Tai Si stood by his side, offering counsel and encouragement. The seeds of revolution had been sown, and Tai Si's role in nurturing them was unmistakable. As Zhou marched closer to its destiny, Tai Si remained a steadfast presence, a reminder that true leadership is born not from ambition but from service and love. The tranquility of Zhou was shattered one fateful day when news arrived that Ji Chang had been summoned to the Shang court. The reason, cloaked in the language of diplomacy, was clear to those who understood the brutal ways of King Zhou of Shang. Ji Chang's growing influence, both as a leader and a unifying force, had drawn the ire of the tyrant. Tai Si's heart sank as she read the message. She knew this was not a mere invitation. It was a trap. On the day Ji Chang departed for the Shang capital, Tai Si stood at the gates of Zhou, watching him ride away with his entourage. Despite her composed demeanor, her mind raced with possibilities. Ji Chang, ever optimistic, tried to reassure her. Tai Si, he said, taking her hands, I will return. You have always believed in me, and I ask you to do so now. Tai Si nodded, but the unease in her chest was unshakable. She knew the dangers awaiting him. King Zhou, infamous for his cruelty and paranoia, had executed many lords under the guise of maintaining order. As Ji Chang disappeared into the horizon, Tai Si turned to the court. She was no longer just his wife. She was now the de facto leader of Zhou. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with no word from Ji Chang.
Zhou scorte greu restless.
Whispers of rebellion and betrayal began to circulate among the nobles. Neighboring tribes, sensing an opportunity, started testing Zhou's defenses with small raids. Tai Si, however, refused to show weakness. In her first act as regent, she gathered the court and addressed the growing dissent. Zhou stands because we stand together, she declared, her voice steady and firm. Our king may be absent, but his vision remains. I ask for your trust and loyalty, not for me, but for Zhou. Her words carried the weight of her conviction, and slowly, the court rallied behind her. Tai Si then turned her attention to fortifying Zhou. She ordered the construction of additional watchtowers along the borders and organized a system of rapid communication using runners and beacon fires. She also implemented food rationing to ensure the granaries would last through any prolonged conflict. Her leadership extended beyond strategy. Tai Si made it a point to personally visit the soldiers stationed at the borders, offering words of encouragement and listening to their concerns. Her presence on the front lines inspired loyalty and determination among the troops, who began to see her not just as a queen but as a commander in her own right. Months later, an emissary from Shang arrived with grim news. Ji Chang had been imprisoned by King Zhou. The court erupted in outrage, with many nobles demanding immediate action. We must march on Shang, one advisor exclaimed, slamming his fist on the table. To sit idle is to abandon our king. But Tai Si, ever pragmatic, knew that such a course would lead to disaster. Zhou was not yet strong enough to challenge Shang directly. Instead, she devised a plan that combined diplomacy with subterfuge. Tai Si began by sending gifts to the Shang court, lavish offerings of gold, jade, and rare treasures. These gifts, carefully selected, were designed to appeal to King Zhou's insatiable greed. Alongside them, she dispatched envoys bearing messages of submission and loyalty. Her goal was not only to buy time, but also to weaken King Zhou's suspicions. At the same time, Tai Si secretly mobilized Zhou's allies. She reached out to neighboring tribes and smaller states, forging alliances through marriage proposals, trade agreements, and promises of mutual defense. Her network of spies also began infiltrating the Shang court, gathering intelligence on Ji Chang's condition and King Zhou's plans. After nearly 2 years of imprisonment, Ji Chang's release seemed as elusive as ever. Tai Si, however, remained resolute. Finally, a breakthrough came when her spies reported that King Zhou had fallen into financial difficulties due to his extravagant lifestyle. Tai Si saw an opportunity. Using Zhou's vast resources, she orchestrated a massive offering to the Shang court, enough wealth to satisfy even King Zhou's greed. The convoy carrying the treasure was led by Tai Si's most trusted advisor, who also bore a letter from Tai Si herself. In it, she pledged Zhou's eternal loyalty to Shang in exchange for Ji Chang's freedom. King Zhou, blinded by his desire for wealth, accepted the terms. Ji Chang was released, though not without humiliation. He returned to Zhou physically weakened but mentally sharper than ever. When he arrived at the gates of Zhou, Tai Si was there to meet him, her eyes filled with relief and pride. "You have endured more than anyone should," she said softly as she helped him from his horse. "But Zhou needs you now more than ever." Ji Chang's return marked a turning point for Zhou. Though weakened by his ordeal, he was emboldened by Tai Si's steadfast leadership and the resilience of their people. Together, they began preparing for the inevitable confrontation with Shang. Tai Si, ever the strategist, urged Ji Chang to focus on strengthening Zhou's alliances and building its military. She continued to play a central role in governance, ensuring that the kingdom remained stable and united. In the court, her influence was now unquestionable. Those who had once doubted her now hailed her as the savior of Zhou. "You are the heart of this kingdom," Ji Chang told her one evening. "Without you, none of this would have been possible." As Zhou rebuilt, Tai Si turned her attention to the next generation of leaders. She worked closely with GFA, their eldest son, who had grown into a promising young man under her guidance. Tai Si instilled in him the values of justice, compassion, and perseverance, knowing that he would one day lead Zhou in the fight against Shang. Her teachings extended beyond her own family. Tai Si founded a council of scholars to educate Zhou's future leaders, ensuring that the kingdom's values would endure for generations. Under her influence, Zhou became not only a land of strength but also a beacon of wisdom and culture. By the end of this tumultuous period, Zhou was stronger than ever. Tai Si's unwavering leadership had carried the kingdom through its darkest days, and her vision had set it on a path toward greatness. Ji Chang, now fully recovered, stood ready to lead his people into the final chapter of their struggle against Shang. But Tai Si knew that their journey was far from over. As she stood on the palace balcony one evening, gazing at the horizon, she felt both the weight of their challenges and the hope of their achievements. "The storm has passed," she whispered to herself, "but the dawn is yet to come." The storm of Ji Chang's imprisonment had passed, but the land of Zhou was still restless. King Zhou of Shang, emboldened by his temporary victory, had doubled down on his oppressive rule, forcing smaller tribes and states to pay crippling tributes. For Tai Si and Ji Chang, the writing on the wall was clear: there could be no peace under Shang's tyranny. As Zhou rebuilt its strength, the seeds of rebellion began to take root, and Tai Si stood at the heart of it all. With Zhou's sovereignty hanging by a thread, Tai Si knew that victory over Shang would require more than strength. It would demand unity. Zhou alone could not face the might of Shang's vast armies, but together with other oppressed states, they could form a formidable force. Tai Si, with her unparalleled diplomatic skills, set out to build this alliance. She met with emissaries from neighboring tribes, smaller states, and even disaffected nobles within the Shang court. Her reputation as a wise and compassionate leader preceded her, and her ability to balance firmness with understanding won over even the most skeptical. One particularly challenging negotiation involved the Fang tribe, a fierce and independent people who had long resisted alliances with others. Tai Si personally visited their chieftain, enduring a grueling journey through treacherous terrain. When she arrived, she spoke not of war but of shared values and mutual survival. "The tyranny of Shang spares no one," she told the chieftain. "If we do not stand together now, there will be nothing left to stand for." Her words resonated, and the Fang tribe pledged their support. While Ji Chang focused on military preparations, Tai Si turned her attention to the next generation of Zhou's leaders. Her son, GFA, now a young man, had shown great promise as both a warrior and a thinker. Tai Si took it upon herself to mentor him, ensuring that he would carry the values of justice, wisdom, and compassion into his eventual role as leader. Tai Si often recounted the lessons she had learned in Huo San, weaving them into stories that captivated GFA's imagination. "A true leader," she told him one evening, "is not defined by the battles they win but by the peace they create." She taught him to view power not as a tool of dominance but as a responsibility to serve. In addition to GFA, Tai Si mentored other young nobles and warriors, creating a cadre of future leaders who shared her vision for a united and just Zhou. Under her guidance, This generation grew into a cohesive and capable force, ready to lead Zhou into its next chapter. As Zhou's alliances solidified and its army grew stronger, the question of timing loomed large. Ji Chang, ever cautious, hesitated to provoke Shang directly, knowing the risks of failure, but Tai Si, with her keen sense of the political and social climate, recognized that the moment was ripe for rebellion. The final push came when news spread of King Zhou's latest atrocity. An entire village had been burned to the ground for failing to meet its tribute. The atrocity sparked outrage across the land, and Tai Si seized the moment to galvanize support. She convened a council of Zhou's allies, delivering a speech that would be remembered for generations. "Too long have we lived under the shadow of tyranny," she declared. "Too long have we allowed fear to dictate our actions. But now, the world looks to us, to Zhou, for hope. Together, we can light the fire of freedom and bring an end to this darkness." Her words ignited a sense of purpose among the assembled leaders, and the decision was made: Zhou would march to war. As preparations for war began, Tai Si played a central role in shaping Zhou's strategy. She worked closely with Ji Chang and his generals, analyzing Shang's strengths and weaknesses. Tai Si understood that Zhou could not defeat Shang through brute force alone. Instead, they would need to rely on cunning and coordination. One of her most ingenious contributions was the use of psychological warfare. Tai Si suggested spreading rumors of unrest within Shang's ranks, sowing distrust between King Zhou and his generals. These efforts, carried out by Zhou's network of spies and emissaries, created confusion and paranoia within the Shang court. Tai Si also advocated for leveraging Zhou's alliances to launch coordinated attacks on multiple fronts, stretching Shang's forces thin. Her ability to think several steps ahead proved invaluable, and Ji Chang often referred to her as Zhou's hidden blade. The final campaign against Shang culminated in the Battle of Mai, a confrontation that would determine the fate of the dynasty. Tai Si, though not present on the battlefield, played a crucial role in its success. She ensured that the troops were well-equipped and motivated, personally overseeing the distribution of supplies and addressing the soldiers before they departed. In her speech to the army, Tai Si reminded them of what they were fighting for. "This is not a war for conquest," she said. "This is a war for justice, for a future where our children can live without fear. Remember that, and let it give you strength." Her words resonated deeply, bolstering the morale of the troops as they marched toward destiny. The Battle of Mai was a resounding victory for Zhou. King Zhou of Shang, abandoned by his allies and betrayed by his own court, took his own life, bringing an end to the Shang Dynasty. GFA, now King Wu of Zhou, led the triumphant army back to the capital, where they were met with celebrations and tears of joy. For Tai Si, the victory was bittersweet. She had devoted her life to this cause, but she knew that the real work was just beginning. As Zhou transitioned from rebellion to governance, Tai Si took on the role of advisor to King Wu, ensuring that the principles they had fought for would guide the new dynasty. In the aftermath of Shang's fall, Tai Si continued to be a pillar of stability for Zhou. She helped establish systems of governance that prioritized justice and fairness, laying the foundation for a dynasty that would endure for centuries. Her contributions were not confined to politics. She also championed the arts and education, fostering a culture of innovation and enlightenment. Tai Si's legacy extended far beyond her lifetime. She was remembered not only as the queen who helped build Zhou, but as a symbol of resilience, wisdom, and compassion. Her story became a source of inspiration for generations, a reminder that true leadership comes from the heart. With the fall of the Shang Dynasty and the rise of Zhou, Tai Si's lifelong vision of a unified and just society had begun to take shape. However, the challenges of building and sustaining a dynasty proved to be as daunting as overthrowing one. In her later years, Tai Si devoted herself to ensuring the stability of Zhou,
Mentoring future leaders.
and solidifying the values that would define the dynasty for centuries to come. After the Battle of Mai and the establishment of the Zhou Dynasty, Tai Si chose to step back from public life, allowing GFA, now King Wu of Zhou, to take the lead. However, her influence remained pervasive. She became a trusted counselor to the young king, guiding him in matters of governance, diplomacy, and the delicate art of leadership. In private discussions, Tai Si often reminded GFA of the principles that had driven their rebellion against Shang. "We did not fight to replace one tyrant with another," she told him during one of their evening talks. "We fought to build a kingdom where the people are respected, where justice reigns, and where rulers lead with virtue." GFA, deeply shaped by his mother's teachings, leaned heavily on her wisdom. He often sought her counsel when faced with difficult decisions, knowing that her judgment was rooted not in ambition but in a genuine desire for the greater good. One of Tai Si's most enduring contributions during this period was her role in establishing the institutions that would support the Zhou Dynasty. She worked tirelessly to create a system of governance based on fairness and accountability, drawing inspiration from the traditions of Huo San and the values of Zhou itself. Tai Si was instrumental in formalizing the Fengjian system, a feudal structure that delegated authority to regional lords while maintaining the central power of the Zhou king. She believed that decentralization, if carefully managed, could prevent the abuses of power that had plagued the Shang Dynasty. To ensure that Zhou's leaders remained committed to these ideals, Tai Si advocated for regular assemblies where lords could discuss issues openly and resolve disputes. She personally attended the first of these assemblies, where her presence and words set a tone of unity and purpose. "We are not rulers over the people," she told the gathered lords. "We are their guardians. Never forget that your power is a trust, not a privilege." As Zhou entered a period of relative peace, Tai Si turned her attention to fostering a cultural renaissance. She believed that a strong dynasty required not only military and political strength, but also a thriving intellectual and artistic community. Under her guidance, Zhou established schools and academies where young nobles and commoners alike could study literature, philosophy, and the arts. Tai Si often visited these institutions, engaging with students and sharing stories of the Zhou rebellion. Her presence inspired a generation of thinkers who would go on to shape Zhou's cultural identity. Tai Si also championed the preservation of history and tradition. She commissioned the compilation of records detailing Zhou's struggle against Shang, ensuring that future generations would learn from their triumphs and mistakes. These efforts laid the foundation for what would later become the Zhou Dynasty's rich historical and philosophical legacy. Despite Zhou's initial successes, the transition from war to peace was not without its challenges. Regional lords, emboldened by their newfound autonomy, occasionally defied the central authority. Tai Si, ever the diplomat, played a key role in mediating these conflicts. In one notable instance, a dispute between two powerful lords threatened to escalate into open warfare. Tai Si personally traveled to the contested region, where she brokered a compromise that satisfied both parties. Her ability to navigate these delicate situations earned her the respect of Zhou's leaders and reinforced her reputation as the kingdom's moral compass. However, Tai Si also recognized the limits of diplomacy. In cases where peace could not be achieved, she supported decisive action to uphold the rule of law. Her balanced approach ensured that Zhou's authority remained intact without resorting to unnecessary violence. As Tai Si aged, her role in Zhou gradually diminished, but her presence remained a source of strength for the royal family and the kingdom as a whole. She spent her later years in quiet reflection, often retreating to the gardens she had helped cultivate at the palace. There, surrounded by the beauty of nature, she found solace and inspiration. Her family often joined her in these moments of peace. GFA, now a seasoned king, would sit beside her and share stories of his reign, seeking her advice as he had done since his youth. Her grandchildren, too, became frequent visitors, eager to hear her tales of courage and wisdom. Tai Si's words, infused with warmth and insight, left an indelible mark on their hearts. In her final years, Tai Si penned a series of reflections on leadership, love, and the enduring power of hope. These writings, though simple in style, carried profound truths that would resonate long after her passing. Among them was a line that would become one of Zhou's guiding principles. A kingdom is not built on stone or gold. It is built on trust, compassion, and the dreams of its people. Tai Si passed away peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by her family and closest advisors. Her death was met with an outpouring of grief across Zhou, as people from all walks of life mourned the loss of their beloved queen and guiding star. GFA declared a month of mourning, during which time the kingdom paused to honor her memory. In the capital, a grand ceremony was held, where leaders and citizens alike paid their respects. Tai Si's contributions to Zhou were celebrated not only as acts of leadership, but as expressions of a deep and abiding love for her people. Though Tai Si was gone, her legacy endured in every corner of Zhou. The institutions she had helped build, the values she had instilled, and the lives she had touched became the bedrock of the dynasty. Under her influence, Zhou thrived as a beacon of justice, culture, and unity. For centuries, Tai Si's story was told and retold, not just as a tale of one woman's greatness, but as a testament to the power of vision and perseverance. In the annals of Zhou's history, she was remembered not only as the queen who guided her people through their darkest hour, but as the heart of the dynasty, a symbol of hope and strength that would inspire generations to come.